Hey guys, and welcome to the final part of this Trails in the Sky SC in-depth summary series. Just a heads up, I've heard from some of you that Lo is pronounced closer to the German pronunciation of Luva, according to the Japanese Evo voice acting. Thanks so much for this tip, but I think for consistency for this particular video series, I'm gonna stick with the Americanized pronunciation. And with that, let's pick up right where we left off last time. Chapter 7 begins with Estelle and Joshua reporting about the glorious and the third stage of the gospel plan to General Morgan and the Queen. Queen Alicia and the General, when pardoning Joshua for his deeds with the Capuas, confirm Lo's story of Hamel's demise. The rest of the party arrives and has a sweet reunion with Estelle and especially Joshua. Cassius takes the cake though, slapping Joshua for being a runaway son and for worrying him and everyone else. But the reunion is interrupted when Captain Schwartz rushes in with dire news. Dangerous creatures have appeared on the outskirts of all the major cities, and the towers have been enveloped in an ominous abnormality. Estelle and company are sent to deal with the towers, while the army and Bracer Guild deals with the Jaeger and Archaism attacks on the ground. At the landing port while boarding the Arce, Olivier unfortunately departs from the party. He can't accompany them since he now has to return to Erebonia. They head to Esmella's tower in the Roland region first. Niall and Dorothy just miss their chance to board the ship, and Olivier is seen talking with Muller. Rather ominously, Olivier reflects that his next meeting with the party will be as foes. On board the Arce, the party views the strange black miasma at the top of Esmella's tower for the first time. The ship can't land in the mountainous terrain around the structure, but it can drop the party off on the surface using the cargo lift. They are then greeted by a soldier who shows them to the bizarre portal at the tower's entrance. Once they step in, they find that the interior of the tower has completely changed to a strange, high-tech, space-like dimension. Kevin makes a correction, saying that the tower hasn't changed, but that something called spatial translocation has sent them to a different place. They encounter various archaisms throughout the tower on their search for LeBlanc and the source of the abnormality. On the way, they find these terminals that contain heavily encrypted data of some kind regarding the Aureole. They finally reach the proper portal and are sent to the top of the tower to face off against LeBlanc. The party fights off his various illusions and tricks, but the full battle is seemingly uninterrupted when the tower returns to normal. LeBlanc notes that his role here is done, promises the party that he'll show the full extent of his power at their next meeting, then takes off. Estelle and company inspect the large device, with Kevin getting a bad feeling that it has completely stopped working again. Back in the Arce, the group entrusts Professor Russell with the data crystals they found so he can start deciphering them. Walter the direwolf is reported to be seen heading into Carnelia Tower, so Zinn joins the party for the next location. The group encounters a similar situation to Esmella's tower in the following 3 locations. They are transported to a strange space-like location, run into various archaisms, and recover various data crystals before encountering a previously met enforcer at the top of each structure. The party battles Walter and Cougar-like archaisms at the top of Carnelia Tower. After doing well enough, Zinn provokes Walter, claiming that he has lost a core principle of martial arts. While he wouldn't be able to defeat Walter, he wouldn't lose to him either the way they both are now. The two engage in their own duel, destroying huge pillars with their bare fists. Zinn yells that Walter could have achieved peak righteousness if he only continued to follow under their master, but Walter's response grabs Zinn's attention, claiming that he doesn't understand the true reason why their master died. The two prepare to land their powered-up moves on each other, but are interrupted by Kilika, who is skilled enough to make it through the entire tower by herself. She tells Walter that she only came to say one thing to him. She asks him why he was never able to see her as her true self. Apparently their master said something to Walter that had to do with Zinn, who demands to know, though Kilika claims it actually isn't about Zinn, but everything to do with her. Immediately after, the device on the tower stops working and the black miasma fades. Walter and Kilika claim that they are glad they got to see each other again, though Kilika concludes that they'll probably never meet after this. It's up to Walter and Zinn to sort out the rest between themselves now. Walter then jumps from the tower. At the top of the Saffril Tower, the party, now with Shara tagging along, encounters Luciola. Shara knows that she won't get anything out of the Enforcer unless she proves her worth to her, so the battle begins with Luciola and her fog monsters. When the battle concludes, Luciola claims she joined the Society in order to better understand her own darkness. It turns out that she was the one who killed the leader of their circus troupe with her own 2 hands by pushing him off a cliff when the two were alone. She could not forgive him for planning to leave them all. Once she returned to the troupe's camp, she fabricated his scream with her bell illusion magic. Before she can say any more, the device on the tower completes its purpose. Luciola tells Shara she'll tell her everything the next time they meet, then she disappears. Finally, Estelle and company are reunited with Ren on top of Ambril Tower. She forgives Estelle for running away from the Glorious while she was away and is happy to meet Joshua again. Estelle apologizes to Ren about turning down the Society's offer, since joining Ouroboros would only cause Estelle to cease being her true self. Ren doesn't understand and is angered when Estelle says that what the Society is forcing upon her as a child is fundamentally wrong. She attempts to strike Estelle, but is blocked just in time by Joshua. Ren changes her mind about Estelle, now claiming that she hates her, before attacking the party. After the battle, Ren tells Estelle a fairy tale. Apparently, her fake parents gave her away to some other people, tearfully saying they would be back to get her, though they never returned. Ren was forced to do many unpleasant things with other adults who always hurt her, and the other children with her got sick and died. This continued on until Lo, Joshua, and other Ouroboros members killed all the adults and liberated Ren from this facility. Joshua confirms, revealing that Ouroboros sometimes gets rid of lesser criminal organizations to absorb their resources. Since then, Ren describes how Ouroboros has become her real home, with Potter Mater serving as her real dad and mom rolled into one. She then calls down the giant archaism to crush the party. The group struggles to fend it off, and right before Ren can order it to annihilate Estelle, the black miasma surrounding the tower dissipates. Before she begins returning to the Glorious on Potter Mater, she swears that she'll butcher them all the next time they meet. Back on the Arce that night, Estelle is in a low mood despite the good news that the Jaegers and Orbo archaisms that were keeping the army busy have withdrawn. She believes that she may be too naive and sheltered to really help someone like Ren. Joshua thinks otherwise though. He believes Ren is a naturally born genius as well as a strong spirit who is able to overcome any adversity. The things she has faced are just as dark, if not further entrenched in the abyss of human cruelty, as what Joshua has faced in Hamel, and yet she did not break like he did. According to her reaction, Estelle's words probably reached a part of Ren that even she currently doesn't recognize. There's likely still hope for her, and only Estelle can reach her. Estelle cheers up and exclaims that she will get to Ren's true self the next time they meet. Just then, an incredibly worked up Professor Russell barges into the command room. The capo has finally finished analyzing the data crystals, which contained reports on how the tower's construction was to seal the Oriole away in another dimension. He's about to go on about the Gospels when he's interrupted by Wiseman, who has the ability to hack into the Arce's communication systems. Wiseman confirms that the Gospels are all conduits of the Oriole's abilities. But aside from that, he wished to contact the party to prepare them for the coming moment of glory. He suggests that they all head out onto the foredeck of the ship for the best view. Everyone rushes outside just in time to witness the truly magnificent reveal of the Oriole. A massive, glowing, floating city appears in the sky, and Professor Russell demands that Captain Schwartz land the Arce before it's too late. The same orbital shutdown phenomenon akin to that of the Gospel's doing is released from the Oriole, wiping out all orbital power throughout the entirety of Liberl. On the deck of the Glorious, Wiseman and the Enforcers are seen savoring the fruits of all their hard work. They had no access to the original Gospel, so they toiled over creating prototype replicas until they finally achieved accurate copies, leading to this very moment. Wiseman thanks them all for making this success possible, then states that the plan is now moving towards its final stage, bringing the chapter to a close. In the aftermath of the orbital shutdown, the scene pans across the chaos and panic throughout the entire kingdom. Everything has been thrown into disarray. Army patrol ships can no longer make their rounds, the bridge just happened to be up in Rouen during the shutdown, and the high-tech city of Zeiss has completely stalled. As a result, trade and business suffers throughout the kingdom since all mass transportation has been grounded. The entire situation goes to show just how reliant the people of Zemuria have become on orbital technology. The good news is that Professor Russell was developing a device called a zero field generator that can stop the interference of the aureole within a very small radius. Since Cassius predicted a worst case scenario, Professor Russell was able to prepare 16 of them before the incident. Kevin suggests that restoring communication should take first priority, so the professor entrusts 10 of the devices to Captain Schwartz and the army, with the remaining 6 given to the bracers to restore communication between the guild branches. Chloe and Kevin head back to Gransel to speak to the Queen and the Archbishop respectively, while taking a device with them for Gransel's guild branch. Tita successfully installs the device so the phone is up and running again. While party members can use the spare zero-field generators to power their orbments during travel from city to city, with each new guild branch restored, one less orbment can be used by the player. Estelle and the rest begin their travels on foot across the world to cover the other regions. At this point in the story, there are a couple of hidden optional quests located in the Roland, Rouen, and Zeiss regions respectively. My personal favorite was one that was located at a certain royal academy. After restoring the phone at each guild, the party heads towards Gransel. Right outside the capital city's boundaries, they witness a bunch of Red Society airships heading straight for it. The scene cuts to the 4 Ouroboros enforcers, LeBlanc, Walter, Luciola, and Ren arriving right outside the city's entrance, where they are greeted by a squadron of the military. The army is no match for them, and the soldiers are wiped out instantly by the enforcers' S-crafts. The Society's archaisms and hired Jaegers arrive and are instructed to take each block of Gransel while the enforcers deal with the palace. Estelle's party rushes to the capital only to be greeted by the terrible sight of all the wiped out soldiers at the border. The scene inside the city is no better as everything is up in flames. They are immediately greeted by archaisms that must be defeated, and afterwards Elnan runs over to them with instructions to focus on the castle while leaving the defense of the city to the army. The scene cuts back to the enforcers reaching the grand doors to the palace. Walter easily breaks down the massive doors with his bare fists, but before both barriers can be destroyed, Duke Dunan is seen urging the Queen and Chloe to prioritize their own safety over anything else as Liberal's ruler and heir respectively. Butler Philip is deeply impressed at how much the Duke has changed, but ultimately is unable to savor the moment since the enforcers have now arrived. Butler Philip leaps from the second floor balcony to confront the Society, swearing that he'll do all in his power to protect the palace as a former captain of the Royal Guard. Back to Estelle's party, they are shocked to find the palace doors completely destroyed. Before they can enter, 3 large archaisms arrive and bar them entry. The party rushes into the castle afterwards and finds the entire station of royal guards completely wiped out. An exhausted Butler Philip calls them over and urges them to hurry towards the Queen's royal chambers before collapsing. The group arrives to find that the enforcers have already secured Queen Alicia and Chloe. Wiseman apparently sent these 4 enforcers to Gransel while he and Lo secure the aureole. Even without the valuable hostages, the party has no chance taking on all 4 of the Society's goons at once. Fortunately, Joshua notices that someone unexpected has arrived, and the scene cuts to Lieutenant Colonel Sid striking at Ren. The distraction buys enough time for Sieg and former Colonel Richard of all people to drive the enforcers away from the Queen and Chloe. Now that 2 of the Divine Blade students have arrived to join the Black Fang and some above-average bracers, the enforcers admit that their task is no longer so simple. The city is also in the process of liberation from the Society by former Intelligence Division soldiers led by Amalthea, who all make quick work of the archaisms and Jaegers. Niall and Dorothy happen to be in the perfect spot to witness the incredible turn of events that'll make for a great scoop later. Since the capture of the royals was only an optional mission from Wiseman, the enforcers decide it's not worth their effort and they begin to pull out. LeBlanc warns them to be on guard for the next trial that is already approaching, then the 4 disappear. Before Richard can fully explain his circumstances, the group must first help fight the fires and completely secure the palace city. Everyone then returns to Gransel Palace to hear Sid and Richard's explanation. Apparently Cassius was expecting Wiseman to advance such a scheme on Gransel, and knowing that most soldiers have trouble fighting without their orbital rifles, he had to secure aid from the former Intelligence Division soldiers who are skilled at hand-to-hand combat. Since he already discussed the plan with Queen Alicia, the Intelligence Division has been granted what's essentially temporary release in order to protect Liberal. Big news on Chloe's end too, since she went through the inheritance ceremony just that morning. She is now the official crowned heir of Liberal, and she asked the group for their support in the future since she's still young and inexperienced. The fact that they all agree to do so comes as no surprise to anybody. Richard makes a soft aside to Sid about how he's been such a fool worrying about the country's future when so many incredible young people exist. Queen Alicia and Sid's soft replies correct him, saying that he still has a role to play in Liberal's future as well. Unfortunately, a soldier rushes in with news from the Hacken Gate. They've noticed that the Erebonian army is mobilizing right outside Liberal's border. The biggest shock is that this platoon is able to mobilize tanks despite the current orbital shutdown, since the machines run on old-fashioned steam power. The only way the Erebonians could have prepared these tanks in advance is if they had prior knowledge that Liberal would be in such a situation, clearly demonstrating that the Imperial leadership must have ties with Ouroboros. Furthermore, Joshua realizes that the Society has drawn Cassius into a tight corner, since he no longer has a hidden ace up his sleeve in the form of Richard and the Intelligence Division. Chloe asks her grandmother to send her as a diplomat to the Erebonians at the border. Estelle and the party plan to escort her to the Hacken Gate, and while bracers are prohibited from directly interfering in the politics between countries, they can serve as a neutral third party in negotiations. Right outside the Hacken Gate, General Morgan is seen addressing Lieutenant General Vander of the Erebonian army, who is leading a whole platoon of steam-powered tanks. General Morgan accuses Erebonia of betraying the non-aggression pact that was only signed a few months ago, but General Vander brings up the worries of the southernmost Erebonian citizens, who have also lost orbital power due to their proximity to Liberal. He also tries to appease Morgan, claiming that what seems like an imperial show of force is actually well-intentioned aid that Erebonians would like to bestow upon their Liberalian allies of the non-aggression pact. He claims that the imperial government only wishes to help Liberal keep the peace among their citizens during such a crisis situation. General Morgan counters that such an explanation is nonsense, since there should be no feasible reason that a tank in their current era should run on steam and combustion. It's clearly much too convenient that the Erebonians have this kind of technology prepared. Just then, Chloe and her entourage arrive. She thanks General Morgan for what he's done so far, then introduces herself formally to General Vander as Crown Princess of Liberal, Claudia von Auslese, which shocks the Erebonian general. General Vander congratulates Chloe on her formal inheritance ceremony, then asks why she is making an appearance. Chloe demonstrates understanding that the Erebonian citizens must be terrified being without orbital power, but she asks the general to consider how frightened his Liberalian allies would feel if foreign troops were to enter the country. Furthermore, Chloe reassures the general that Liberal's military is currently investigating the phenomena above Valeria Lake and have already successfully dealt with many of the Society's actions on their own. Another voice cuts in, stating that while the princess's words sound pretty, they ultimately hold no tangible assurance. To everyone's complete shock, the man who appears is Olivier. He introduces himself as an imperial prince, Olivert Race Arnor. Chloe demonstrates recognition of the name, but not the face of such imperial nobility. Prince Olivert states it's unsurprising, considering he's a bastard child of the king. It's revealed officially that the foreign prince that former Colonel Richard was prepared to betroth to Chloe in first chapter was actually Olivier this whole time. The prince goes on, stating that Erebonia cannot overlook what is currently transpiring, and informs Chloe of the rumors spreading across the empire, that the floating structure above Liberal is actually a groundbreaking technological advancement that was built to retaliate against the empire that invaded them 10 years ago. Chloe can't muster a rebuttal, so an enraged Estelle runs forward, accusing Olivier that he knows exactly what's really going on. The prince wonders if he has met this girl at a party before, but then concludes that it can't be so since she lacks refinement and must be a commoner. Estelle is beyond pissed and exclaims that as an upper-ranked bracer, she is entering the negotiations as a neutral party. The prince is surprised at Estelle's B rank, acknowledging that such a veteran status possesses the right to be involved in such a large-scale international crisis. Estelle swears upon the bracer emblem that the floating structure is not a hostile military weapon. She even extends the offer to forward the military and Bracer Guild's records of the Society's incidents to the Imperial leadership as proof of Liberal's good intentions. Considering that the Bracer Guild is a well-respected international organization, Prince Olivert acknowledges that Estelle's words carry weight, but he still asks for tangible evidence that Liberl, along with the Bracer Guild, has the ability to put a stop to this serious crisis if it really is the cause of the rumored Society of Ouroboros. Princess Claudia makes a final proposal, asking the Empire to allow Liberl a certain amount of time to handle the situation on their own. Prince Olivert concludes that it's only respectful to agree, and as if right on cue, the Arcee touches down on the plains as Cassius addresses everyone involved. The very fact that the royal flagship has flight capability is sufficient evidence that Liberl holds enough power to deal with the floating city. Cassius and the prince share a light-hearted laugh, believing it odd that the other seems so familiar. Afterwards, Prince Olivert states that he shall keep his word on the honor of the proud imperial family, and orders the troops to withdraw. It's decided that he'll board the Arcee himself as a witness and insurance for Erebonia that the crisis is properly seen to. General Vander, Muller's uncle, is astounded that Prince Olivert would make his first public appearance in ages at such a center stage. Olivier swears that he won't let such a thing as the Hamel conspiracy happen again, and Chancellor Osborne must be in contact with the society. So Olivier declares that he'll do all in his power to bring this monster, whose first loyalty isn't to Erebonia itself, down. It'll be far from easy, considering that the Chancellor commands 7/10 of the military and is well respected in politics. Not to mention the king, Olivier's own father, completely trusts Osborne. As the troops withdraw, the group rushes over to get their own exasperated feelings out over Olivier's crazy plan. Cassius, Professor Russell, Captain Schwartz, and Kevin greet them all as well. The professor was able to make a zero-field generator that's large enough to support the Arcee's engine, and Kevin is tagging along, apparently on orders of the Gralsritter, and the fact that the church seems to understand what the Aureole actually is. It's most likely not the entire floating city itself, but an artifact located within it that supplies the power. Finding this artifact will give them all a viable shot at handling this massive crisis. The group turns to Estelle, the de facto leader of the group, to officially accept their mission. Cassius will be staying on the ground in Liberl since the army can't be left without its best tactician and commander. He gives a letter to Joshua before the group boards and takes off for the floating city, bringing an end to the chapter. As they fly through the skies, the group learns that Niall and Dorothy have also joined the crew on the Queen's request. The entire journey isn't smooth sailing though, since Society airships are sent to intercept their course. The Arcee proves to be agile, and its main guns are able to blast a way through the smaller airships. But it's soon met with more than its match in firepower with the appearance of the Glorious. The Arcee's size and speed allows it to outmaneuver the massive air fortress, prioritizing reaching the floating structure. The ship breaks through the clouds, and the crew is treated to their first magnificent view of the actual city. Professor Russell notices a singular tall tower and infers that it must be an important part of the island. The Arcee makes to land near the tower, but is thwarted by Lo on a high-tech Society archaism, which happens to take out a vital component of the royal flagship. The ship plummets, and by the grace of Idios, escapes certain death by landing on the very edge of the city. The group recovers from the scare, and takes a look outside, with Sieg reporting that the Glorious is docked on the other side of the city. It's decided that a small party will be sent to investigate the tower, while the rest of the crew focuses on the ship's repairs. The good news is that all orbments work on the island, since the Aureole only neutralizes the orbments it deems foreign. Before the party leaves, Joshua asks Estelle to wait since he needs to prepare something from the ship's storeroom. Kevin chimes in saying that he needs to tune up his crossbow, then tells Joshua he's terrible at lying to Estelle once the other two leave. Joshua rather uncharacteristically pleads with Kevin that he's the only one who can help him out. The two head to the medical bay to take care of something, then return to the other party members. The scouting party reaches one of the beautiful park blocks and takes a floating elevator to a high-tech terminal. They are unauthorized to make use of the high-speed rail system, but they are able to unlock a section of the underground tunnels on the basis of an emergency. Estelle and company makes their way through the tunnels and encounters many strange ancient monsters. They come out in what looks like a residential district and explore the ancient civilization's homes until they come across Josette being surrounded by Society archaisms. Estelle's group takes out the machines from behind, then wonders why Josette is here all alone. It turns out the Bobcat was in the air above the city when it first appeared and crash landed here. They were working on repairs when Josette noticed a strange archaism and shot it down. Its destruction alerted the Society's Jaegers, which showed up and took Josette's brothers and crew. Despite their bickering, Estelle reassures Josette that they'll find her brothers on their way to securing the Aureole before the Society can get to it. Josette joins Arcee's crew for the time being, and the rest continue the exploration. They come across a device that is able to issue reprints of the Gospel. However, the individual must be a match in both name and biological makeup to receive a reprint. They return to the Arcee, where Professor Russell encourages them to look into the records of the ancient data crystals for a name of someone from the ancient civilization. One of Chloe's ancestors names herself as the record keeper, so the party heads back to the device that issues gospel reprints with Chloe in tow. They obtain an original gospel, which grants them authorization to unlock another underground tunnel. This time they come out in what looks like an industrial district. In their exploration, they spot where the Glorious is docked and decide that now is their best chance to infiltrate since they overhear that the enforcers are currently away. Before they begin their mission, they return to the Arcee to grab Josette, then proceed. None of the regular barriers are up, so they're able to find the captured Capuas easily. It's up to Estelle's party to find a card key that will authorize the release of the prison cell barriers. On their way back to the prison cells after finding one, they encounter the almighty Gilbert again, along with a vicious society archaism. Afterwards, they return to the prison cells and free the Capuas. The entire large group is able to escape the Glorious and reconvene at the residential district. The Capuas set to work repairing the Bobcat while also getting in touch with the Arcee's crew through radio. The scouting party returns to the industrial area to unlock one more underground tunnel. This time they resurface right outside the central axis pillar. Once again, they encounter various strange ancient monsters throughout the pillar's interior until they eventually must battle with LeBlanc. They're able to break part of the enforcer's mask, causing him to leave. The terminal unlocks the blocked door and allows them access to upper levels in the tower. The next enforcer up is Walter. It's vital that you bring Zin to this fight for the unique scenes after the battle. Zin believes that because of his diligent training, he is able to strike Walter, a pure genius in martial arts despite being his lesser. Though Walter reveals surprising information that their master told him that Zin was better than him in pure talent and quality. Kilika's father was going to have the most talented student inherit the dojo, meaning that Zin would be the one betrothed to Kilika instead of Walter, as a successor of the dojo is to take the master's daughter in marriage. Zin is in utter disbelief, placing Walter further on a pedestal and says that he couldn't betray Kilika's feelings as she and Walter were dating at the time. Though Walter comments on the pride of everyone involved, there was no way that he or Kilika could personally accept being together with someone who wasn't the successor of the dojo. Finally, Zin tells Walter the truth of what he learned. It turns out that their master had been diagnosed with terminal cancer and wanted to end his life in battle with his greatest student. Essentially, he used Walter to have an honorable suicide. Zin puts all that he learned from the Taito and Bracer Way in his fist, while Walter places all he learned from the society into his own. They strike each other, with Zin successfully knocking the enforcer out. The party then unlocks the next barrier with the terminal. Next up is Luciola. It turns out that Mr. Harvey, the troop leader who Shara came to see as a father figure, racked up an exorbitant amount of personal debt to keep the circus running. Other circus acts had to engage in more sleazy deals and lines of work to supplement their show's income, but Mr. Harvey wouldn't allow it. He planned to leave the troupe in order to save the members from being associated with him as his personal debts began to catch up, so Luciola killed him. Even after the battle, Shara, although hurt, cannot find it in herself to hate Luciola. The real truth is finally revealed when the enforcer admits that she confessed her love to Harvey, but it was to no avail since he only saw her as a daughter. Luciola became afraid of the fact that she'd have to move on eventually, so in that moment she decided to kill him, so that he could remain hers forever. She jumps from the tower, but Shara snags her arm with her whip before it's too late. Luciola says that she never regretted killing Harvey once, but has regrets over leaving Shara behind. She then cuts the whip and plummets from the tower, and despite the terrible event that has just occurred, Shara stands resolute that they must continue on to stop the society. And finally, they reunite with Ren. She gives Estelle a final chance to take back what she said about the society, but Estelle becomes strict, lecturing Ren that the world doesn't just revolve around her. But she ultimately has a right to make her own decisions, so Estelle won't force her out of the society. However, she wants Ren to know that Estelle and Joshua care about her well-being and that they will always be a welcoming option for her if she chooses to leave the society. Unsurprisingly, Ren calls down the full might of Potter Mater to finish what was started last time. In the end, Ren becomes distraught that Potter Mater could lose. Ren tells them to leave her, claiming that they don't understand anything about her. Estelle literally slaps some sense into Ren. A part of growing up is learning how your actions hurt other people. Ren accuses Estelle of being just the same as the adults who continue to hurt her despite being aware that they were hurting her. But Estelle just hugs Ren, urging her to follow the answer lying in her heart. If she actually does think Estelle is the same as the other adults, then so be it. But the older girl just wants Ren to listen to her true self. Ren activates Potter Mater's booster mode, claiming she needs time to think. She apparently has a slight change of heart, exclaiming that she won't forgive them if they die, before flying off to her home. The group unlocks the final barrier and heads off to face the Blade Lord at the very top of the Axis Pillar. Despite knowing that Lo's strength is in the same class as S-rank Bracers and the Society's Anguisses, the party must stand and fight to put an end to Ouroboros' plans. Joshua also has a personal reason to fight, stating that it's time to face his own weakness. He needs to show Lo the strength of his conviction behind leaving the Society's ideologies for Estelle and his newfound friends. Lo claims the promise to Karen is now fulfilled, so he won't hold anything back this time. After a tough initial battle, Joshua challenges Lo 1-1. The party witnesses an incredible fight between two Enforcer-level opponents. Joshua does well at first, but he's soon placed on the defensive. He locks his blades against Lo's and asks him what he meant when he wanted to bring the world to trial. The Enforcer answers that he needs to see that humanity can answer for its failings. Across the span of time, humanity has inflicted terrible wounds on itself, and the tragedies are forgotten over the decades and centuries. Even the places of seemingly perfect paradise are only so because people delude themselves from this reality. Ultimately, the good can't last, and the ancient citizens of the Aureole were returned to Earth. Lo wishes to strip modern society of such similar luxuries so that they will have to confront this truth. Joshua firmly tells Lo in response that he's the one who is delusional, that he must have realized that there are others who truly do good. Even his sister Karen gave her life to save his own, giving him the opportunity to find Estelle and people to rely on. In Lo's moment of psychological shock, Joshua launches his best attack and successfully disarms the Blade Lord. Lo admits the failings of his ideology after Joshua successfully shows him the Bracer way, fighting not to kill. Since he now has the answer to his question about the nature of humanity, he no longer has reason to work with Ouroboros. Completely unlike his usual self, Joshua hugs Lo, elated that the real person he remembered is back, and the now former Enforcer returns the embrace. He thanks Estelle for how she was able to reach out to Ren, Joshua, himself, and so many others. Agate now has conviction behind his blade compared to the first time they crossed swords, and finally, foreshadowing to the next game is revealed when Lo asks if Kevin knows a person named Rufina. She apparently was so skilled that she was able to fight toe-to-toe with Lo. Kevin says she unfortunately died in an accident 4 years ago, and Lo responds that he's sorry for the church's loss of such an upstanding individual. Discussion returns to the Aureole. The Central Axis Pillar's real function serves as a broadcasting signal that allows the Aureole to channel its power throughout the city. The party must be careful though, since the Septarian seems to be sentient. Out of nowhere, Wiseman appears and deals a severe blow to Lo. He activates what's called a stigma in Joshua, allowing him control over the former Black Fang. The professor taunts Kevin, knowing that a Gralsritter would know the implications of this power. Wiseman also has the audacity to claim that this is all Estelle's fault, since he wouldn't have had to activate the stigma if Joshua rejoined the society of his own free will. He then teleports to the core sector where the Aureole lies, and just in the nick of time, the rest of the party rushes in to fend off the massive archaisms that are blocking Estelle's path to the core sector's elevator. Good old Father Kevin reassures Estelle that Joshua will return to his old self, and when the elevator finally touches down, they rush over to Wiseman. Here they learn of what happened to the ancient society of the Liber Arc 1200 years ago. Humanity was given 7 divine treasures, each capable of granting miracles in its own way. Society split into factions, each one pursuing the ideal of each corresponding septarian. As for the Aureole, it had the power to bestow any wish mankind wanted through his or her individual gospel. People lived in paradise on this island, free from suffering, but all good things cannot last. In exchange for these miracles, people slowly gave in to the artificial bliss bestowed by the Aureole, which could present wish fulfillment not only within the physical realm, but through dreams as well. The people lost their sense of purpose, drive, and ethics, which gave rise to madness and despair. Birth rates dropped and suicide ran rampant, prompting Chloe's ancestor Celeste and other rebels to work tirelessly to seal the Aureole away. Wiseman states that because of this, mankind was forced to suffer through the Dark Ages on the surface. Even now, mankind destroys itself over petty conflicts. Since humanity is doomed following either path, Wiseman proposes a new one, an enlightened human species that is perfectly rational and free from the influence of crude emotion. Estelle says flat out how this plan is nonsense. People aren't helpless without the need to become super beings. So many people across Liberal have been helping each other throughout the crisis, but the Anguis counters that the folly of mankind makes it so that war and conflict will always exist if left in its current state. Estelle defends her ideology, stating that even though her mom died in the war 10 years ago, she died to protect her daughter, who now finds it in herself to be a bracer to protect others. Bonds between people aren't meaningless. Without emotion, there would be no bonds, and therefore there'd be no point in living as mankind since all people would be isolated from each other anyway. Wiseman then challenges Estelle to prove to him that bonds between people can overcome his own ideology. He paralyzes the other two in the party with an evil-looking eye, commands Joshua to seize Estelle, and to ultimately kill her. Wiseman claims that Joshua will provide the final test for humanity. Once he slays Estelle, the professor will break his hypnosis to see his reaction. Once his heart shatters again, it will allow Wiseman the opportunity to construct a new human personality again. Even when staring at Joshua's blade pointed at her, Estelle only thinks of his well-being. She apologizes that she won't be able to keep her end of their promise, and urges him to never run from reality again, even if she has to die. Joshua then attacks Wiseman. It turns out that long before this final encounter, Joshua was already growing worried about the stigma Wiseman planted in him long ago. With the help of Father Kevin, a hypnotic wedge was placed between Joshua's conscience and the stigma, so that if he was commanded to kill Estelle, the increased pressure placed on the stigma would cause it to shatter. He placed his bets on the fact that Wiseman's cruelty could only command him to do the one thing he feared most. And all in all, Cassius was the one who gave Joshua this initial idea in the letter he wrote to him. Wiseman challenges the party, showing off his power as one of the society's Anguis. He's surprised at the group's skill, but takes the opportunity to fuse with the Aureole. Together, they become a grotesque-looking monster that is able to form an absolute barrier, capable of reflecting all physical attacks and orbal arts. He paralyzes them with the evil eye again and taunts Joshua, wishing to etch another stigma into his soul. Just then, Lo touches down on a massive archaism. He asks Wiseman for confirmation of his involvement in the Hamel plot 10 years ago, since the professor has consistently demonstrated time and time again that he approaches people in their moments of weakness and offers them help. Furthermore, it allows him to advance his plans without dirtying his own hands. It turns out that Wiseman preyed on the despair of some Jaeger dropouts and weak Erebonian politicians with no foreseeable future. He claims that the fact those people took the bait, which ended up inciting an entire war, demonstrates the sinful nature of mankind. Lo swings his sword down, cracking Wiseman's barrier. It has the ability to do so, since it was forged by the divergent laws of the Grand Master. Lo is fatally knocked back, but urges the party to use this opportunity to defeat Wiseman here and now for good. The final battle against Aureole Fuse Wiseman and its cronies begins. Estelle and the others do enough damage that the Anguis attempts to use the true power of the Aureole. However, the Septarian begins acting on its own accord. Wiseman screams as a grotesque snake-like figure attaches itself to the aureole. It transforms further, and the final stage of the battle begins. After a tough, long fight, the aureole fades into light, leaving Wiseman on the ground. The professor is confused that the Septarian had disappeared and teleports away. The party rushes to the fatally wounded Lo, where he and Joshua exchange their last words to each other. Lo urges Joshua not to die to protect what's important to him, but to live for it instead. He also asks Estelle one last favor, to always keep protecting their little brother. Finally, he whispers that he now understands why Karen was able to die with a smile. Joshua is distraught over Lo's passing as the rest of the group catches up and discusses their escape route. The others all hurry out as the ground begins to shake, leaving Joshua and Estelle alone. He tells her to go on, but Estelle slaps him, exclaiming that they have to keep the promise they made to Lo. Joshua takes Lo's sword and wishes him and Karen peace before leaving. The scene cuts to a wounded Wiseman, who is actually worried for once, pondering if the entire gospel and aureole situation was actually a test for him from the Grand Master. Kevin approaches him alone and erects a barrier that easily dispels Wiseman's evil eye. It turns out that Kevin was no Gralsritter newcomer, but was actually a veteran of the church's knights. He's actually their number 5, and suddenly displays cruelty that he hasn't shown at any other point throughout the entire game. He spits out to Wiseman that his true mission was to send a filthy heretic and apostate like him to Gehenna, launching a stake from his bowgun. Wiseman is shocked that the church would allow Kevin to use such a thing carved from the salt pillar to defeat him. He screams that Kevin is a damn dog before his whole body crystallizes into salt. Kevin mumbles to himself that Joshua is lucky to be able to escape this sort of life when Campanella appears. The Enforcer confirms the rumors for himself that the Fifth Dominion, otherwise known as the Heretic Hunter, is just as cold as they say. Campanella is here only as a pure observer though, and actually shatters Wiseman himself. Finally, he teleports away with the now deceased Angus's staff. Since finding the aureole wasn't a major part of Kevin's mission, he quickly makes his way back to the others. The entire group is seen making their escape through the underground tunnel since the Halo Rail can't run without the aureole's power. Joshua falls to his knees and Estelle stops to help him. Kevin rushes back, telling Joshua he's not going to be feeling well for a while since he forcibly ripped his stigma out. Joshua is better able to manage his energy now that he's aware of the side effects. As they are running, Joshua shoves Estelle back as a giant part of the tunnel takes out the entire path. The two tell the others to go on ahead, but Shara yells that she couldn't bear to tell Cassius that she left them behind. Some of the others mention seeing other tunnels along the way, so there must be another path out. The two groups wish each other well before splitting off to find the exits. Estelle and Joshua continue through tunnel after tunnel before finally reaching a path on the surface. The worst case scenario occurs though, as both the path forward and the path back crumbles. On top of that final column, Joshua apologizes to Estelle for collapsing and getting them into this situation, but Estelle won't have any of it. She tells him that despite their hopeless circumstance, she doesn't feel any fear. She asks him to hold her and they share a final kiss before the column plummets, launching the two embracing figures into a free fall. The once magnificent floating city is seen crumbling, the debris crashing into the ocean below. The Arce and the Bobcat race away from the Liber Ark, everyone on board incredulous that Estelle and Joshua never made it back on board. Chloe demands that Julia take the Arce back to find the two, but the captain can't fulfill Her Highness's command, since the Arce would only get caught in the wreckage. Everyone is understandably despairing when Dorothy notices Sieg flying around looking very happy. Ragnard breaks through the clouds with Cassius, Estelle, and Joshua on his back. Estelle is exasperated again that her dad just happened to ask another old friend for a favor. When she met Ragnard before, he told her that he couldn't get involved with the aureole directly until a true answer was given unto the Septarian. But an answer has been offered, so his contract is now fulfilled, allowing him the authority to help Joshua and Estelle in their time of need. However, he warns them that this is essentially only the beginning, while Cassius states that other battles will be fought elsewhere from Liberl in the future. But ultimately, he tells the two to savor their incredible victory today. Ragnard finally catches up with the Arce and the Bobcat, Estelle and Joshua waving to the others. The scene then leads into the ending slideshow of the entire game. Hold on, we're treated to one more heartwarming epilogue scene. Joshua greets Karen as he lays Lo's sword down next to her grave. Now the two can be together forever. Estelle introduces herself to Karen for the first time and gets embarrassed over admitting that she's Joshua's girlfriend. The topic becomes more serious as Estelle states she wants to become stronger than her dad even, so that she can do more whenever the society happens to strike next. She also wants to find Ren if they can. The game ends with a portrait of Estelle and Joshua holding hands, saying to each other that no matter where the path takes them next, they'll walk it together. And oh boy, sorry for the long wait. I hope you all enjoyed this final part to the Trails in the Sky SC story summary. The next series up will be Sky the Third. I'm planning to split the summary into two main parts, one that will focus on Kevin and Reese's story, while the other will be a condensed summary of all the necessary lore that's needed to appreciate the Crossbell and Cold Steel games. Hope you all will look forward to it, and consider subscribing so you don't miss out. So until next time, take care, see ya!